All right, everybody, welcome back to the Heath Barn. Like I said Monday on our last episode, part one with Dave Wischnowsky, we were going to discuss the Cardinals and Cubs in part two, and this is part two. He is a diehard lifelong Cub fan. I am a diehard lifelong Cardinal fan. So this is a very fun convo. We talk about all kinds of stuff. We start in the 80s, and talk about 2016, and then we also we get into our favorite players, our favorite memories. We talk about Steve Bartman. He was there that night as a reporter, which is awesome. So we got that perspective. We go through all kinds of stuff. My son Stevie makes a cameo, asks him a question. He was great. Again, like I said on the last episode, he's a very, very knowledgeable guy with sports and probably everything, I would assume. But, I just know him from sports, so whatever. But part two is great. Cardinal Cubs, two guys in their 40s reminiscing, talking about what makes them a Cardinal fan, what makes them a Cub fan, and so on and so forth. So it was a lot of fun. He was a great guest. I'd like to get him back on sometime. I think we could do some more fun things. So thank you, Dave Wischnowsky. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and here it is. Illinois down. Hey, by the way, this is probably going to be a two-parter. I can already tell. But that's okay. It's good. It's good conversation. Okay, now, unless there's anything else you want to add about Illinois that you can think of, I mean, we can move on to baseball a little bit. But
I think we covered the Illini pretty well. I'm happy to talk some baseball.
Okay. Well, I'm assuming just where you grew up, it was Cubs from day one, right? I'm assuming.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the little teeny tiny towns better than I thought you did around here. So like we were talking about before, it's like 50-50 around here. But I was just brought up as a Cardinal fan, and I've been diehard for my entire life. So I have a funny Cubs story. This does not mean I'm not like a spiteful, because like some of my best friends are Cubs fans, and it's all good, and we're whatever. Yeah. So I will say it's a friendly rivalry. You'll always get somebody in there that wants to make it a bigger deal than what it is. But I've been to Wrigley one time in my life, and it was back in the I would say the Soriano days.
Yeah.
I know it was the Soriano days, but maybe I'm trying to think who else played for him back then. But my buddy and I went, and this is just me being a smartass at Wrigley Field. But everything was fine, but the Cubs were down. It was like the eighth inning, and the Cubs were down like 8-2 or something like that. So my buddy was ready to leave, and I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. So but we had to walk all the way across the stadium, and as we're walking, the Cubs get this big rally going, and they start scoring runs. So we're kind of stopped 7-run eighth inning, and they went up 9-8. And everybody's going crazy, and I was just wearing neutral stuff. I am not one of those obnoxious fans. I would never wear like other teams, like a Cardinal shirt to a Wrigley. Like I'm a respectful fan, but everybody's going nuts. So I just they didn't know. They just assumed I was a Cub fan. So I just started high fiving all these Cub fans. I'm like, this is our year. I'm like, this is our year. And I'm high fiving all of them. My buddy looked at me like, you're just, like you're a dick. So I was just like high five. So I was screaming, this is our year. This is the year. And I was just being a smart. But that's the only memory I have from being like a.
See, now I'd like to think you were just seduced by the beauty of Wrigley Field, and it turned you into a temporary Cubs fan. You had temporary insanity and became a Cubs fan.
Yeah. And my buddy was like, yeah, you're an asshole. But I was like, yeah, this is our year, But, and the thing too, I have, I don't know what it is for me to be this vindictive, but it's I have so many friends that are Cub fans and stuff like that, but it's 2016,
my dad was he's taught me to be, he's a diehard Cardinal fan. He's like said something about like, oh, he even mentioned kind of what the Cubs to win, and I was like, I've never rooted for Cleveland harder in my life. I'm like, I don't know what it is, but I can't do it. I'm like, I can't.
I respect it. I respect it.
Yeah, and I don't know if do you feel like that when the Cardinals are doing well, or are you just kind of whatever, or how do you feel about all that?
I mean, I don't like the Cardinals. We have an interesting situation in our family these days, though, too, because we grew up diehard Cubs fans, and my brother married a girl who's from St. Louis originally. My brother lives down outside St. Louis now. He lives just west of St. Louis, and he has for over a decade now. So they've got 4 kids. I got 3 nephews and then a niece, and my nephew's oldest will be 11 here next month, and then 9, 6, and then my niece just turned 4 this spring. So there's been a battle for my brother's a Cubs season. He's a Cubs fan. I'm a season ticket holder in the bleachers. I have half we have a nights and weekends package. I have half the package. My brother has a quarter. Even though he lives in St. Louis, he has a quarter of the Cubs season tickets. He doesn't get up very often, but he likes having that. And then another buddy of mine here in Chicago has a quarter. But there's been kind of a battle for the baseball souls of my nephews. They're respectful of both sides. I mean, I think it's probably a losing battle with them being there in St. Louis, but it's something that I think me and my dad and my brother probably too would prefer they be Cubs fans. And I mean, I definitely root against the Cardinals. I don't like to see the Cardinals do well. I think it's a different dynamic. I can't put myself in the shoes of the Cardinals haven't won it in 108 years. How would I react if I watched that? Would I root for the Cardinals to do it or not? Probably not.
I'm not a bad person, but man, when it came to that situation, I was just like, oh my gosh, I want Cleveland to win so bad. Where's this anger coming from? I don't know,
the Cardinals, I definitely there's an animosity there, and it's an interesting state because to your point, I've always thought really when I was down at college and then covering sports around Central Illinois as well too. 74 is kind of an unofficial line of demarcation. I feel like you get there and the line kind of blurs. You've got a lot of Cardinals fans, you've got Cubs fans still as well too, but further you travel south in Illinois, it's definitely majority Cardinals fans down there. So it is an interesting state dynamic with that as well too. So it's definitely. I'll be going to the Cardinals are up at Wrigley this coming weekend, and my parents are coming up, and my wife, we're going taking my dad and my mom for Father's Day with Cubs cards this weekend. So it'll be an interesting environment with that, and I can tell you we'll be happy if the Cardinals lose. We'll be rooting pretty hard against them and pretty hard for the Cubs. So I respect that dynamic.
Yeah, I also feel though too I'm not one of those. I look at the standings. Like if let's say we're trying to knock off the Brewers and the Cubs are playing them, I'm rooting for the Cubs. There are some people that just won't root. No matter what. I'm not like that at all. But I and it's getting to where this division, I don't look at any of them differently really. As I get older, when I was younger, it was maybe a little bit more with the Cubs, but I want Milwaukee, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh to all get their butts kicked too. So it's not like it's with the schedule changes and things like that, you don't have as many head-to-head matchups as you used to. So it's kind of taken away a little bit of that. You're more worried about just who's ahead of you in the standings, which the last couple of years the Cardinals have everybody ahead of them in the standings. So it's but I can't. That's a whole other deal. My gosh, I could gripe about that forever. But do you have? Let's go Cubs 80s. Let's go Cubs 80s, just like I do with Illinois. So you have what is your let's start with memories from the 80s. I'm thinking 84. Were you into the Cubs in 84?
84 is what made me a diehard Cubs fan, but it was my first game was I went through at Wrigley Field was in June of 1983 when I was 7. Went up with my dad. It was actually a Cubs-Cardinals game, as a matter of fact. It was a very memorable game because it was Fergie Jenkins' last great performance. Was my first game. He threw a complete hit shutout against the Cardinals, and I was there with my dad in June of '83, and that was what that was my first. That was like I loved Wrigley Field. That was an awesome. We saw this incredible game. Saw all-time great Cubs great. Really, he was at the end of his career there, and that was his last dominating performance. So that was awesome to see. And then '84 happens, and that's the year that made me a diehard Cubs fan. I mean, I could still name the entire starting lineup. Rattle that off top of my head. I've got a number of jerseys of '84 Cubs and everything as well too. So that was a team that really made me a fan.
Okay, I'm a Cardinal fan, but I bet you I can name that '84 lineup.
All right.
See how close I get. Okay, we got Jody Davis behind the plate.
Yep.
Leon Durham, Ryan Sandberg, Larry Boa, Ron Say.
Yep.
And then we got Gary Matthews, Bob Dernier, Keith Moreland.
That's it. Look at that. Look at that. You know it just as well as I do. I love it. I actually, as a Cubs season ticket holder, I got an opportunity for a pregame autograph session. It was either going to be with an existing Cub or a Cubs legend. Back in May, and it wouldn't know who it was until a couple days beforehand, and it turned out it was Jody Davis. So that was awesome. I got Jody to sign a baseball, and one of my college buddies from Chabance, actually, he lives down in New Orleans now. I got a signed photo of and I sent that down to him because Jody was his favorite player when he was growing up. So that was really cool meeting Jody. I'm impressed that you know that '84 Cubs team as well as I do, the lineup. That's awesome.
I was the kid that like memorized the back all the baseball cards and stuff.
Yep. Yep.
Now let me see if I can reach into the pitching staff a little bit. Steve, okay, was Scott Sanderson on the pitching?
He was.
Steve Trout. Sutcliffe was your best pitcher, obviously.
Yes, he was Cy Young that year, 16-1.
Yeah. Trout, Sanderson, and then your closer. Well, they didn't really have closers back then. I guess
they did. He's a Hall of Famer now too, the closer on that team, if you think about it.
Hang on. Goose Gossage wasn't the closer.
No.
Hang on. Oh, Eckersley.
No. Eckersley was actually a starter back in those days.
Oh, Suter?
No,
he went
not him either, because he was on the Cardinals at that time.
He was, yes. He was with us '82, but then he went to Atlanta. Yeah, that's my bad. See, now I'm starting to sound dumb. I'm naming guys that I'm getting them wrong.
No,
tell me.
Lee Smith.
Oh gosh, I should have known that. Yes.
Yeah, it's sometimes like, oh yeah, it slipped my mind. But that was Smith was and you know what, this in 2 weeks actually on the 23rd of June. It's going to be the 40th anniversary of the Sandberg game, where Sandberg had the home runs in the ninth, and then in extra innings against the Cardinals there at Wrigley. And they're going to be unveiling a new statue of Sandberg, and he'll be there. Sandberg's been fighting cancer recently as well too, so he's healthy enough. He'll be there, which is cool. I'm going to that game. They're playing the Mets that night. It's on an ESPN night game. They moved it to a night game on Sunday night. But yeah, Lee Smith was the closer that season. But Trout and Sutcliffe and Eckersley was one of those. Trout, Sutcliffe, Eckersley, Sanderson, and then it was, I don't know, they had like Rick Russell and Dick Ruthven both kind of started fifth spot that season as well too.
When I Thad Bosley coming into pinch hit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. When I first started this pod, like I know everybody does a Harry Carey voice, but I kind of like. I found we moved into my I bought my family's house off my mom after my dad passed away, and we moved in there, and mom never got rid of anything, and there was a million baseball cards from like the 80s like around the house. So I was like, well, what I'll do is I'll just pretend I'll be Harry Carey, and I'll just go through it was me using my voice and then doing Harry, like talking back and forth. It was just me, and I was like, well, I'm gonna go through these cards, and if I found like a name or something like that he would either get the name wrong or he would get like something wrong. He'd just butcher them all. But going through all those 80s cards was just amazing. Like, it's just, and so this just pops in my head. I don't want to whatever, but Bartman, where were you? What were your thoughts? All that good stuff.
I was in the ballpark. I was covering that game. Yeah. Nice. I was one of the 40,000 that were actually there, and it was without a doubt, one of the most memorable games of my life that I've ever been. I was working in Ottawa at the newspaper then, and I had press passes. I had to cover the playoffs. So I was at every home game for the '03 playoffs. And I went down with two of my college buddies and one of their wives to games 4 and 5 in Miami as well too. So I was at most of the games during that run. It was, even with the way it ended, that was still an incredible experience being there for those games. I'll never forget being there in Miami in Game 5, and the Cubs lose that game, and Josh Beckett's still throwing like 100 miles per hour in the ninth inning, strikes out Sammy Sosa. And my buddy I'm with he says to me, he's like, they're done. The Cubs are done. And I'm like, get off the ledge, man. They're coming home with Pryor and Wood. Still,
Right.
they're what are you talking about? Like, and I don't know. He called it really, but we get back, and I'll never forget. I was up in Chicago before that game, and I was on a street called Southport, not too far away from Wrigley. And I kid you not, a black cat walked out of a yard, and was like up in front of me, and I'm like, I saw this. I'm like, I am not letting that cat like cross my path. So I ran ahead and beat the cat.
Then a goat came walking across.
Yeah, right. And a goat walks past me. And I scared that cat back into the yard. I'm like, you're not crossing my path, man. But I was there. I was sitting. So for the '03 playoffs, they had it was auxiliary press seating outside the press box. So if you were at Wrigley and looking up at the press box backwards up at it, it'd be to the left there. So they set up tables on the seats with the fan seats there. And actually, I like that better than being in the press box because I could get the full experience of being at the game with the whole outdoor atmosphere and everything. But when that happened, I've always explained to people, there was a palpable shift in the mood at the ballpark. You could like physically feel the mood change when it happened. Everyone was it was like there was a buzz, and then it just like the whole stadium just like kind of like shifted 180, and that you felt this sensation of just the crowd, like what was that, like what is going on with it, and then everything obviously just cascaded and just fell apart from there. And I texted to myself on my phone I had at the time, 5 outs away, and I had that on my phone for years until I got that phone. It was before the cloud and everything, so it just existed on the phone, but I had that for the longest time. So I was there, and then I was back at Game 7 as well, too, and to me, that's still the loudest I've ever heard Wrigley Field was at right there early in Game 7 when Kerry Wood homered and gave the Cubs an early lead, because then I don't think Wrigley can ever be louder than it was back in the '03 playoffs, because with social media, people don't need to be in all there. They're not as communal, I think, in a lot of ways. But at Wrigley,
instead of clapping and yelling and screaming, they got their phones up and they're trying to video stuff.
And that too, absolutely. And it wasn't just the fans in the ballpark. There were thousands of fans, beyond the walls too, just wanted to be there. And it was amazing when Wood hit that home run. I remember seeing above the bleachers, you could see the treetops out on Waveland and Sheffield, and the trees were shaking back and forth because people were like shaking the trunks of the trees, and it was waving back and forth, and it was just unreal noise because you had 40,000 people in the stadium, and I don't know how many thousand more outside it, and then on the rooftops as well, and it was just unreal noise. And then obviously they lost that game too. It was just devastating and just surreal the way everything fell apart. But to answer your question, for the Bartman game, I was in the ballpark, and it was an experience to say the least.
Yeah. Well, don't you feel like, too, though, to me, it's like, okay, Alex Gonzalez feels that, and then it's like it never happened. I compare that a lot to 85 when the Cardinals got screwed on that call. And,
yep.
Okay, but here's the thing. It was Game 6.
Yeah, you still had
And for Whitey Herzog being a Hall of Fame manager, and I love him. I mean, I love him, But to me, as soon as that play's done, just be like, hey, we can't do nothing about it. Let's get the next guy out. Instead, they all bitch and moan and everything like that. Get hammered Game 7, And I feel like it's kind of the same thing because all everybody talks about is that poor guy.
I know. And you're absolutely right.
Game 6, it wasn't even Game 7,
Agreed.
And the same thing with Doug Deckinger, that umpire. Yes. Like oh man, you should listen to the pod I just did with Todd Thomas, he's the MC at Busch Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
He tells a story about Deckinger's niece that he knew at Southern, and they had to move like 4 or 5 times and everything, So things like that. It's like first of all, it's not the end of this game,
Right.
so and then you have another game after this, and so I mean
I agree. I think with the Bartman game, it happens. I think first of all, I think if Moises Alou hadn't made such a big deal out of it, like
his reaction set the whole thing off, man.
Exactly. That was what got the crowd riled up, and everyone started like, that was weird. Like this has just suddenly gotten weird. Because if he would have just shrugged it off and gone back to the left and not made a big to do about it, I don't think it would have been that big a deal. But he did make the tantrum that he had with it, and then he was Gonzalez, obviously, all Gold Glove caliber shortstop, and he muffs a routine double play. And then also, Dusty Baker should have come and gotten Pryor earlier, too. He left him in too long, I think, as well, too. So there were a bunch of other things that contributed to it. Obviously, what everyone remembers and attributes it to is Pryor. And my take always on the curse, with the Cubs, that there was never an evil entity that loomed over Wrigley Field. But at the same time, 100+ years of pressure was a real tangible thing. And I think what the quote unquote curse was, it emanated from the crowd. If the crowd moved, and then it would cascade down the players, they could feel that tension. And then I think that led to the mistake with Gonzalez. I think he felt the stress and the tension in the crowd, because it really did. I can't explain unless you were there how much the mood tangibly, physically changed in that ballpark. You could literally feel it. And I know the players felt that. But you look at and it cascades down. And like in 2008, the Cubs had a great team. And then they got beat in the first round. In one game, they had all 4 infielders made an error, and things started falling apart, and I think that was the fans again. That pressure fell down, and that's one thing I was glad the Cubs actually in 2016 they were on the road, because I don't think they would have won the World Series if they were playing at Wrigley. I really do not. I think the pressure would have been too much.
Yeah, you're exactly right, because Moises Alou, if he's playing for like the Giants and that happens, he doesn't act like that after.
You're right.
You know what I mean? He just goes back to left field and keep on playing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that's all real for sure. Looking to right now, the Cubs team. What are your thoughts? How are you feeling about? Well, no, okay, hang on. Why am I skipped? See, that's me.
See, you want to skip 2016, don't you?
I am. I didn't even. It's like a Freudian slip there. Okay, let's go to 2016. Let's do it. Okay, so where were you? What were your thoughts? How did you go to those World Series games? Did you feel like you guys had it? What were your thoughts? Game 7 during that rain delay. You guys got Hayward. He was garbage, but apparently gave a big pep talk that fired everybody up.
That was the one thing he did for us. Yeah.
Yeah.
So by that time in 2016, I was fortunate enough to be a season ticket holder, so I was at most of the games as well too. It's kind of an interesting story. I'd been on this Cubs season ticket waiting list for 12 years or more, and before the 2015 season, my number finally came up. And the Cubs had just coming off a terrible 2014 season. They were still in that rebuilding mode, which I had a lot of questions about at the time. I didn't see where the pitching was coming from. I had all sorts of questions. But a week, so I was like, I don't know. I'd like to have season tickets, but I really want to pay for season tickets right now with the team so bad. And a week before I had to make my decision, they hired Joe Madden. So I was like, all right, I can see where this might be going in a good direction. And thank God that I did. Then I got the nights and weekends package. I knew that existed, and they don't give that anymore, so I didn't have to commit to the full season ticket package. And then I got my brother and another friend to partner up. So we did. And if I would have been kicking myself forever if I had passed on season tickets in that season, because they make the NLCS, World Series, NLCS, I would have never forgiven myself for it. So I was fortunate to have season tickets. I split them with my brother and my buddy Harvey. So I was at all the home games except one during the 2016, and I was I felt good. I felt like when they were down 3-1, I had a feeling they were going to come back and force it back to Cleveland, and I had a good feeling about it. And then Game 7, I was at my condo with my wife, and my parents were up from Bourbonnais, and we were watching the game there. That was, I don't know if I've ever been lower than when Rajai Davis hit that home run, and I was so angry and frustrated with Joe Madden because I felt like he just kept trying to have to prove he was the smartest guy in the room and couldn't wait to pull Hendricks, couldn't wait and then put in Lester, couldn't wait to pull Lester, and he'd been riding Chapman too hard. It was just I was livid about the way he managed.
He did that a lot, didn't he? Like even
Yes,
in regular
he did. I mean, I never would have thought that I wouldn't like the manager who finally won a World Series with the Cubs, but I'm not a Joe Madden fan, and I feel like he made it was all about Joe. It wasn't about the team. He couldn't help but tinker with the lineup constantly, or just make unnecessary decisions just to kind of exert himself in the game. We talk about ump shows during games. I thought Madden was thought it was a manager show a lot of times.
Right.
So couldn't have been lower. And then that rain delay, and I was like, what? I mean, that whole game was crazy. But then when they did win, just unbelievable emotion and feelings to see that happen. And I wanted to be in Chicago rather than Cleveland. I wanted to be here in the city and just see how the city reacted. And we lived in a condo with a balcony that looked out onto Ashland, which is a pretty main street, north-south street here in Chicago on the north side. And it was awesome just seeing cars. There were until after 2 in the morning, just honking constantly. There was a big semi with a cab without a trailer on it, but had all its lights inside lit up with a big W flag, and the guy was just laying on the horn at the intersection of Ashland and Belmont where we lived, and it was just crazy to see. And it wasn't until late that night when my wife had gone to bed, my parents were gone and everything, and I got onto Facebook and I was just looking at all the posts about other people, and then it really hit me because it was like, it'd been like 40 years of being a fan and growing up with my dad and my brother and just watching Cubs games and seeing so much losing. It really hit me, like the emotion of it then, and like I'm not ashamed to say I broke down crying, like looking, just thinking about finally seeing the team win, and that's something special with sports. Getting to experience something like that was awesome.
It's like I think at the time I was just, come on Cleveland, but
I get it. I get it. It's a diehard rivalry, and
yeah.
I don't think any Cardinals fans like seeing the lowly Cubs finally rise up and be a powerhouse. So I get it.
Yeah, well, back then it was Madden and Matheny, and you could just see Matheny losing control of everything.
Yeah.
But I will say this: again, I keep going back to that pod I just did a couple days ago in St. Louis, but he tells a great Matheny story about him being a great dude. So I respect him and everything. I know he's a great human, but he used to call it the Matheny wood chipper, which I kind of feel like Dusty did with like Wood and Pryor a little bit. Do you feel like that? Like he kind of over?
Yeah, I don't think he managed them the best by any means. He burned out some of that starting stuff. I mean, some of it probably wasn't his fault, and guys were going to get hurt in some ways in any case, but for sure, I hear what you're saying. I like that, the Matheny wood chipper. That's a funny way to phrase it.
So many good pitchers that just got burnt out and got through Rosenthal. Kevin Seagrass was a great lefty for a couple of years, and then he just couldn't pitch anymore because he just. But okay, that's a side note. So, favorite players. How about you do? Let me think here. I kind of want to give you my favorite Busch Stadium memory. So give me your favorite in-stadium Wrigley memory, like a play or a game, or what would it be?
Well, my favorite players when I was growing up were Ryan Sandberg and Andre Dawson, and probably outside the memories that we just talked about, the other most memorable games I was at in 1987 when I was 11 years old. It was Dawson's MVP season with the Cubs, first season he joined. And terrible team, incredible season by Dawson. They played the Padres. It's the Eric Schau, Andre Dawson game. Eric Schau hit Dawson in the face with a pitch. Dawson had homered earlier in the game, hits him in the face with a pitch, and there's a bench-clearing brawl. Sutcliffe's the first guy out of the dugout. I don't know if do you remember this game at all? Do you have recollection of this?
I remember Dawson that year too, 49 homers, right? In 87 when he
He would have had 50 if he hadn't got hit in the face. But it was because he was out for a few games. He gets hit flush.
You were at that game?
I was at that game. I was there with my dad, my little league coach, and his son. So the four of us were there. And Dawson gets hit in the face. He's down, prone, unconscious at home plate. Sutcliffe's out, charging the mound. Brawl breaks out at home plate. Dawson's just laying there prone still. Finally, they calm things down a little bit. They're looking at Dawson. Dawson then gets up, and then he starts charging after Eric Schell, the pitcher, going to the dugout, everything turns into chaos again. They're trying to get Schell out of the, down in the clubhouse, keep Dawson away. And the kicker with all of it, that day was seat cushion day at Wrigley Field. So they'd given out free seat cushions. So there are hundreds of seat cushions just being flung onto the field, just like frisbees going out on the field. So it's chaos. The field's littered with all these white seat cushions. There's all this chaos going on, and they've never had a seat cushion day at Wrigley Field again since then. And in the past, all these many years since, in the 37 years since then, since that day when they threw them all around. So that was like an incredible, crazy memory from Wrigley Field as well too. But my favorite players as a kid I loved Dawson, and I've always loved Sandberg. I think Sandberg's probably my favorite all time.
Yeah. My son is 7, and he plays. He's in they call it a feeder league, and so it's 5 to 8.
Yeah.
And get a few kids that can field pretty well. He plays second base. If you hit it right at him, he does great. But in my mind, I'm like, he's got a little Sandberg thing here because he doesn't have a lot of range yet.
It's range, isn't it? Extreme.
Hit it right at him. As a Cardinal fan, Roland's my favorite of all time.
Okay.
Yeah, and he just plays the game the way you're supposed to play it. So I always loved guys that would get traded here and love it and stay.
Yeah.
But he's just he's my favorite, and there's a pretty big drop after him. So
okay,
because everybody assumes Albert. Everybody assumes Albert and Yachty and stuff like that, but I mean, and I respect the way they played and everything like that. Obviously, you love Albert and his results, but I mean, Roland was always my guy. And then my favorite memory was Game 7 of the NLCS 04. I was there when Roland homered off of Clemens to send us to the World Series.
Awesome.
So yeah, but
that's awesome.
Yeah, but I'm walking into my house real quick. Let me get my son. He wanted to ask you something.
Oh, all right.
Something, yeah. Hang on, Stevie.
I love it.
Come here, buddy. Come here. You're on the podcast.
Is this Stevie? Stevie?
Yeah, his name's Stevie. Come here. Come here. Tell Dave hi.
Hi.
Hey, Stevie. Nice to meet you.
Okay. You wanted to ask him something about the Cubs, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you want to ask him?
What's your favorite Cub of all time?
My favorite Cub of all time is Ryne Sandberg, the second baseman for the Cubs. That he was the one I played some second base. I hear you play second base too. I played some second base when I was a kid. Just really liked Ryne Sandberg, and he won the MVP in 1984 when I was 8 years old, just about your age, and that made me a big fan of his for life. And he's getting his they're putting a statue up for him in a couple weeks at Wrigley Field, so I'm gonna be there and see when he gets his new statue up. But he's my favorite of all time.
What do you think?
That's cool.
That's cool. You're not allowed to like him though because he played. Yeah.
That's a great question. I like that question. Who's your favorite Cardinal of all time?
Probably Lou Brock.
Oh, all right. I like someone who knows his history.
Right, and that's also good because he played for the Cubs, and it's
he did.
One of the rip-offs in history. So
that was one of the worst trades in history. We traded him to you guys.
I did not tell him to say that.
Ernie Brolio, sore arms pitcher, and you guys got one of the best base stealers and fastest guys in baseball of all time. That's a great choice. I love that Lou Brock choice.
Yeah. When he was little, he got a deck of caricatures, 52 cards, and it had it's supposed to be the 52 best Cardinals of all time or whatever, and he memorized when he was little, so he knows a lot of the old guys. But hey, one more thing, buddy, come here. Come here, tell him where you went this weekend. We went to St. Louis this weekend, but he wants to tell you one thing that Chicago doesn't have that St. Louis has. Where'd you go? You went up at what?
I went up in the arch.
Oh, you did? I still haven't done that. How was it?
Cool.
Yeah, I want to do that sometime. My wife and I have talked about doing that, and I want to do that sometime. I think that would be really cool. That's awesome that you did it.
Okay. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's good meeting you, Stevie.
So bye.
Bye.
All right. Okay. Good. Yeah, this will definitely be a two-parter because we're going long. But yeah. I didn't go. My wife and him went up in the arch. But yeah. All right. Well, this is fun. Let's see here. I feel like we covered about everything I wanted to talk about. Oh, well, current Cubs. How are you feeling?
I'm frustrated with the current. I think probably.
Ditto.
Yeah, that's what I was. I was actually down in Rantoul, or I was in Urbana, staying in a hotel in Urbana over the weekend with my nephew. My oldest nephew was up for a baseball tournament in Rantoul, and so all the other parents and his coaches, they're from they're Cardinals fans. So I was talking to one dad about how he felt about the Cardinals, and he's like, we got a lot of issues. He's like, we got hitting. He's like, we need more pitching. Our bullpen's worn out. I'm like, I'm feeling you, man. It's a lot of same things with the Cubs right now. They can't hit. Their starting pitching actually has been good. The bullpen's been terrible. But I think Cubs and Cardinals fans are kind of in a similar boat right now. I speaking as a Cubs fan, I'm disappointed and frustrated with the way they're playing right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole Central, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and both of us, we're all within like a game of each other, and nobody's above 500. So it's just kinda,
Exactly. But the thing is, they're all within like half a game of the third wild card spot too. So it's I don't think anyone. I think it's going to be an interesting season where the season's not going to be over for anybody for a long time, and that's a good thing at least. But it's been frustrating play so far.
Yeah. We went Saturday and Sunday, and yesterday felt a little. I shouldn't say yesterday. Sunday, 2 days ago, felt a little more normal, like what we're used to seeing, because there was 40,000 people there, and they played good, crisp baseball and won 5-1. But you can't split at home against the Rockies,
Right.
So it's just, and then you've got all the uncertainty with Ollie and everything else. And it's funny too, if you go back and listen to our owners, Mike Matheny got fired, and he drove me nuts. But every manager, you were talking about Joe Madden driving you nuts. Like Larissa did the exact same thing to me, exact same. And he won 2 World Series, and he still just drove me nuts. But whenever there's all this uncertainty about Ollie and things like that, Matheny got fired because and the owner said, he's above 500, but that's not good enough here with this fan base and with this organization, blah blah. Last year we go 71-91, and Ollie's still managing, so it's whatever.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, it's frustrating, but it's also one of those where it's still wide open. So a big trade here, something going on with somebody will probably make him pull ahead of everybody else. But I haven't checked the Cardinal game tonight, but they're playing against that stud from Pittsburgh that just got called up not too long ago.
He's something else. The Cubs had all they could handle with him. They had to face his first 2 games were against the Cubs, and now the Cubs were winning, and now they've tied it up. They're playing Tampa Bay, and now it's tied up 2-2. I think Tampa just tied it up against the Cubs bullpen, which has been the story of the season.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, this was fun, man. Thanks for coming on.
You too. Absolutely. This was great. I really enjoyed our conversation. This was a blast talking everything. And for FYI, the Pirates and Cardinals are 0-0 in the bottom of the 7th for your.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah. Hey, right before you said that, I was going to tell you I didn't want any spoilers, but it's okay because it's 0-0.
Well, you haven't missed anything.
Michaelis pitched decent though. Yeah, I like doing like drafts and lists and things like that. So maybe sometime hop back on sometime and we'll do something a little more fun. Yeah.
This is
all right. Well,
John, I really enjoyed talking Illini and baseball with you. It's been a lot of fun.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks a lot, man.
You have a good night. Tell Steve good night
too. I got to get my son's sign off. He always said.
All right. I love it.
I asked him. He was like in kindergarten when I started. I'm like, I need a sign off line, and he told me just to clap my hands and say that's that. So that's what I'm gonna go with. So thanks a lot, Dave, for coming on, and that's that.